In the history of martial arts, there are masters, there are legends, and then there is Bruce Lee. He was not simply a fighter. He was not simply a movie star. He was a philosopher, a scientist of human movement, and a revolutionary. A man who looked at centuries of martial arts tradition and asked one simple, dangerous question. What actually works? The answer he found would shape the foundations of the martial arts world forever. It was not a style. It was not a system with rigid rules and fixed forms. It was a living, breathing philosophy, raw, honest, and free. He called it Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. This is its story. To understand Jeet Kune Do, we must first understand the streets that forged the man behind it. Bruce Lee was born on November 27, 1940, in San Francisco, but Hong Kong was where he grew up, where he fought, and where his martial arts journey began. The Hong Kong of the 1950s was a city of energy and tension-crowded streets, rival gangs, and a culture where young men settled their differences with their fists. Bruce was restless. He was brilliant, and he was always in trouble. By his early teenage years, Bruce had been in enough street fights that his father recognized something had to change, not to stop the fighting, but to channel it, to give it form, discipline, and purpose. And so, at the age of 13, Bruce Lee walked into the school of a man who would change his life forever. That man was Ip Man. Ip Man was not an imposing figure by any outward measure. He was small, quiet, and refined, a gentleman in the classic Cantonese tradition. But those who crossed hands with him discovered something extraordinary behind that calm exterior. He was a Grandmaster of Wing Chun, a southern Chinese martial art developed centuries earlier. Legend says by a Buddhist nun named Mui. Wing Chun was designed with a radical philosophy for its time economy over power, efficiency over brute force. It was built for a smaller person to defeat a larger one, not by matching strength, but by redirecting it. Its principles were precise. The center line theory, the idea that controlling the vertical line running down, the center of the body controls the fight. The chain punch, rapid, straight punches delivered in explosive succession. Simultaneous attack and defense blocking and striking in the same motion, collapsing the gap between protection and offense. And above all, simplicity. Strip away the unnecessary, keep only what works. Bruce Lee absorbed these principles deeply. He trained under Ip Man for nearly 5 years. Dedicated, passionate, sometimes obsessive. His fellow students remembered him as someone who would practice a single movement, hundreds of times in a single session, turning it over in his mind, testing it, feeling it. But even as a teenager, Bruce was not content to simply repeat what he was taught. He asked questions. He pushed back. He wanted to understand, not just imitate. Ip Man, rather than being offended, was intrigued. He recognized in Bruce a mind that could not be contained. And perhaps he sensed that this particular student was destined to take the art somewhere new. He was right. In 1959, at 18 years old, Bruce Lee left Hong Kong for America. He carried with him a suitcase, $100, and 5 years of Wing Chun training. He settled in Seattle, Washington, where he enrolled at the University of Washington to study philosophy. This was not a casual choice. Philosophy for Bruce Lee was not an academic subject, it was a survival tool, a way of cutting through illusion to find truth. He read voraciously. Jiddu Krishnamurti on freedom from conditioning, the Tao Te Ching on the nature of effortless action, Zen Buddhist texts on the dissolution of the self, Western philosophers Descartes, Hume, Nietzsche. He was building a mental framework, and that framework would eventually become the philosophical skeleton of Jeet Kune Do. But Bruce did not only live in his mind. He began teaching martial arts in Seattle, first informally in parking lots and parks, then formally opening his first school, the Junfan Kung Fu Institute. Junfan was his Chinese name. The school was modest, but what happened inside it was anything but. Bruce was already experimenting, already modifying, already asking the question that would define his life's work. Does this actually work against a real, resisting, unpredictable opponent? Not in theory, not in a controlled drill. In reality, that question was a fire and it was about to consume everything. By 1964, Bruce had moved to Oakland, California, and opened a second school with his student and friend James Lee. His reputation was growing. He was demonstrating at martial arts tournaments, stunning audiences with his 1-inch punch and his 2-finger push-ups. He was beginning to attract attention from Hollywood. But in the Chinese martial arts community, his growing fame was creating friction. Bruce was doing something that many traditional masters considered deeply wrong. He was teaching Kung Fu to non-Chinese students, to Westerners, to anyone who came to his door. In the traditional view, the arts of China belonged to the Chinese people. To share them with outsiders was not generosity, it was betrayal. A challenge came. A representative of the traditional Chinese martial arts community arrived at Bruce's school in Oakland. His name was Wong-Jack Man, a skilled Kung Fu practitioner. By all accounts, a capable fighter. The message he carried was simple: stop teaching non-Chinese students, or fight. Bruce chose to fight. The confrontation took place behind closed doors, with only a small number of witnesses present. Accounts differ on the details, they always do with legendary fights. But on the essential outcome, there is little dispute: Bruce Lee won. And yet what happened next is more important than the fight itself. Bruce Lee was furious. Not at Wong-Jack Man, at himself. The fight had lasted too long. Perhaps 3 minutes, perhaps more. Bruce had felt winded. His movements had felt awkward. His Wing Chun, the only formal system he had ever studied, had felt rigid and limited when applied to a real opponent who was moving, resisting, and refusing to cooperate. He told his wife, Linda, "I need to change everything. What I'm doing is not enough." That admission, made in private, in the aftermath of a fight he had won, was the moment Jeet Kune Do was born. What followed was one of the most remarkable periods of personal research in the history of combat sports. Bruce Lee became a one-man laboratory. He studied Western boxing with the intensity of a professional fighter, preparing for a championship bout. He was fascinated not just by the punches, but by the footwork, the way boxers moved, created angles, slipped punches, controlled distance. He studied fight footage obsessively. He was particularly captivated by one fighter above all others, Muhammad Ali. Ali was not a martial artist in any traditional sense. He had never studied Kung Fu or Karate. But Bruce Lee recognized in Ali something that most martial artists completely lacked: genius in motion. Ali's footwork was poetry. His ability to control range, to be exactly where he needed to be, never where his opponent wanted him, was, to Bruce, the purest expression of fighting intelligence. Bruce is reported to have said that if he ever had to fight Ali, he would lose. Not because Ali was bigger or stronger, though he was, but because Ali's understanding of distance and timing was simply on another level. That kind of honesty about his own limitations, about the superiority of others in specific areas, was central to who Bruce Lee was, and it drove him to keep learning. He studied fencing next, and this is where a key technical discovery was made. In Western fencing, there is a technique called the stop hit, or in French, the coup d'arrêt. Rather than parrying an opponent's attack and then countering, the fencer attacks into the opponent's attack, striking them before their movement is complete. The offensive action and the defensive action become one. Bruce recognized this immediately as the most efficient possible combat principle. It aligned perfectly with the simultaneous attack and defense philosophy of Wing Chun, but extended it into a universal concept. Applicable to any range, any technique, any situation, he had found the heart of what would become Jeet Kune Do, the intercepting fist, Jeet Kune. He also studied wrestling, grappling, and what would later be called ground fighting. He studied Muay Thai for its elbows, knees, and low kicks. He studied Eskrima, the Filipino art of stick and knife fighting, which would later become, through his student Dan Inosanto, deeply integrated into the JKD curriculum. And he filled notebooks, hundreds and hundreds of pages of notes, diagrams, philosophical reflections, and technical observations. These notebooks survive. They are extraordinary documents, the private journal of a genius at work, talking to himself, arguing with himself, building something new out of the wreckage of everything he had questioned. Central to Jeet Kune Do, perhaps more central than any single technique, is its philosophy, and that philosophy is best expressed in 4 words. Be like water. Bruce Lee said this in interviews, in writing, in conversation with his students. He meant it as a complete martial philosophy. Water has no fixed shape. It adapts completely to whatever contains it. It can be soft enough to slip through the tiniest crack, or powerful enough to erode mountains. It does not resist. It flows around, through, over, under. A traditional martial artist, Bruce argued, was like a cup. They had a fixed shape, a fixed identity. A Wing Chun fighter fights like Wing Chun. A judo player fights like judo. Their style was their container. And when the fight required something outside that container, they were lost. Jeet Kune Do had no container. Bruce expressed his core principle in a formulation that has been quoted 10,000 times, but never loses its power. Absorb what is useful. Discard what is not. Add what is uniquely your own. This was not a permission slip for sloppy thinking. Bruce was ruthlessly honest about what worked and what didn't, but he refused to be bound by loyalty to any single system. The truth, he believed, could not be owned by any one tradition. It had to be discovered fresh by each individual. He also articulated what he saw as the 3 ranges of combat: kicking range, punching range, and grappling range, and insisted that a complete fighter must be fluent in all 3. In the 1960s, this idea was considered radical, even absurd. Most martial artists specialized and considered that specialization to be a strength. Bruce considered it a weakness. Today, of course, every serious combat sports athlete trains in striking, wrestling, and ground fighting. The UFC, the world's premier combat sports organization, was built on exactly this premise. What Bruce Lee understood in 1965, the mainstream combat sports world did not catch up to until the 1990s. He was 30 years ahead of his time. By 1967, Bruce Lee had given his evolving philosophy a name. In Cantonese, Jeet to intercept, to stop. Kune fist style, do the way, the path. Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. The name captured the central technical principle, intercepting the opponent's attack before it can be completed, rather than waiting and reacting. It captured the deeper philosophy, not a defensive art, but an art of proactive, intelligent interception, meeting the threat at its source. But Bruce himself was deeply ambivalent about the name. Almost immediately after coining it, he expressed reservations. He had created JKD specifically to escape the limitations of named styles. Now he had named his own. He could see the danger once you give something a name. People begin to worship the name instead of understanding the thing. He wrote in his notes, Jeet Kune Do is just a name, used a mirror in which to see ourselves. Jeet Kune Do is not a style. Do not reduce it to a style. He wanted the name to be a doorway, not a destination. An invitation to inquiry, not a new orthodoxy to follow blindly. It was, perhaps, the most honest thing any martial artist had ever admitted about their own creation. Bruce Lee did not teach Jeet Kune Do widely. He was famously selective, even secretive, about who he accepted as students. His classes were small, intimate, and ferociously demanding. He did not want large numbers of students learning superficially. He wanted a handful of people to understand deeply. Among those people, several names stand out. Dan Inosanto, a Filipino-American martial artist of extraordinary breadth, Inosanto became Bruce's closest training partner, assistant instructor, and, after Bruce's death, the most important custodian of his legacy. Inosanto brought to their partnership a deep knowledge of Filipino martial arts. Eskrima Kali Arnas that Bruce incorporated enthusiastically into the evolving JKD curriculum. Joe Louis, already a formidable full-contact karate champion. When he began studying with Bruce, Louis transformed his fighting style under Bruce's influence and became one of the greatest fighters of the era. Chuck Norris, the future action star, was a serious martial artist. Long before his film career and his sparring sessions with Bruce Lee are among the most storied encounters in martial arts history. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketball legend, was a devoted student of Bruce's, training with him for years, and later appearing with him in the unfinished film Game of Death. These men and others carried something precious forward, but the question of what they were carrying and how faithfully would become one of the most contentious debates in the martial arts world. On July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee died in Hong Kong at the age of 32. The cause was cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, likely triggered by a reaction to a pain medication. He was found in the apartment of actress Betty Ting Pei, lying down for a nap. He never woke up. The world was stunned. He was at the height of his powers. Enter the Dragon, the film that would make him a global superstar, had not yet been released. He had projects planned, students to teach, ideas, still forming in those extraordinary notebooks. And now he was gone. Jeet Kune Do, a philosophy explicitly designed to resist becoming a fixed system, was left without its creator, without the one person who could say with certainty, "This is what I meant." What followed was inevitable. and in its own way, fitting. In the decades after Bruce Lee's death, Jeet Kune Do split into two broad schools of thought, a divide that still runs through the martial arts world today. On one side, those who practice what they call original JKD, the specific techniques, drills, footwork, and training methods that Bruce personally taught. These practitioners argue that Bruce's art was a complete and specific system, and that the faithful approach is to preserve and transmit exactly what he created. On the other side, those who follow JKD concepts, an approach developed primarily by Dan Inosanto, which holds that Bruce's true legacy was not any specific set of techniques, but rather the process of inquiry itself. The principle of absorbing what is useful, discarding what is not, adding what is uniquely your own. By this view, the faithful student should continue to evolve, just as Bruce did, incorporating new arts, new insights, new tools. Just as Bruce incorporated boxing and fencing and eskrima into his original Wing Chun foundation. Both sides honor Bruce Lee. Both sides make arguments that have genuine force. But perhaps Bruce himself settled the argument long before it began. He wrote, "If people say Jeet Kune Do is different from this or that, then let the name of Jeet Kune Do be wiped out, for that is what it is. Just a name. Please don't fuss over it." He wanted the art to remain alive, and living things change. Today, half a century after Bruce Lee's death, the influence of Jeet Kune Do is everywhere. It is in every UFC fighter who trains in boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, and Jiu-Jitsu, not out of eclecticism, but out of the honest recognition that real fighting demands fluency in every range. It is in every coach who tells their fighter, forget your style, read the fight, give them what this moment requires. It is in the very concept of mixed martial arts, a concept that Bruce Lee articulated in writing in his private notebooks in 1965. The martial arts world did not listen to him then. It took 30 years and the birth of the UFC for the world to discover what he already knew. But beyond the octagon and the training hall, the legacy of Jeet Kune Do reaches further still. Bruce Lee's philosophy: absorb what is useful, discard what is not. Be like water, refuse to be limited by any single form, is not just a martial philosophy. It is a philosophy of life, of learning, of the courage required to question what you have been told and discover what is actually true. Every person who has ever broken free from a limiting belief, questioned an inherited assumption, or built something new from the ruins of what didn't work, they have walked, unknowingly, in the footsteps of Bruce Lee. He was 32 years old when he died. In that short life, he revolutionized martial arts, transformed cinema, challenged racial barriers in Hollywood, and left behind a body of philosophical writing that continues to be read, studied, and argued over to this day. And at the center of all of it, the films, the fights, the philosophy was one idea. One honest, relentless, uncompromising idea. That the truth cannot be contained in any style, any tradition, any name, any box. That the greatest martial art is the one you discover within yourself. That the path to mastery is not imitation, it is investigation. Using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. Jeet Kune Do was not Bruce Lee's gift to the martial arts world. It was his gift to every human being who ever wanted to be free. And it lives on not in any particular punch, or kick, or school, or certificate on a wall, but in the mind of every person who watches, questions, absorbs, and refuses to stop growing. Be like water. And